Few things have changed since 1938, this being one of them for sure. Imagine, if you will, a world in which you get paid for all of the overtime hours you put in. If a newly reintroduced bill has its way, that's exactly what will happen for company employee drivers. The Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers, or Got Truckers Act, is back, and so is Mark Schremmer of Landline Magazine, who's going to help us understand what the bill is all about. Mark, great to see you as always.
Yeah, glad to be here, Scott.
This is the second time the Got Truckers Act has been introduced in Congress. The first time was the fall of 2023. There are going to be folks out there who maybe didn't catch it that time around. Understandably, they got stuff going on. Let's start with exactly what this bill aims to do. I know that's a loaded question. There's a lot in there.
Sure. To make it as simple as possible, so the Fair Labor Standards Act, all the way back in 1938, basically exempted motor carriers from having to pay overtime wages to truck drivers. The thought process at the time was that would actually discourage truck drivers from wanting to work an abundance of hours. And, probably before, like the hours of service requirements, that's just a way you didn't want truck drivers out there 70, 80 hours just so that they could, get a lot of overtime pay. But the reality as we move forward here to 2025 is that truckers are working those amount of hours and they're not being compensated fairly for it. And that's what this bill plans to do. It basically would remove that exemption and update that, the Standards Act to no longer exempt motor carriers from having to pay truck drivers overtime.
Yeah, a few things have changed since 1938, this being one of them for sure. This has the support of OIDA for a number of reasons. Part of it is this belief that passing the Got Truckers Act would kind of have ripple effects throughout the industry. We, of course, as you talked about there, are talking about company drivers, employee drivers in this respect. However, the ripple effects from this passing are maybe not talked about enough, I think, which there are quite a few of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with valuing all of a truck driver's time. And if you do that for company drivers, that should also pay dividends for owner-operators as far as, being able to negotiate your rates and all of that. I think if you start there and you change kind of the landscape where instead of drivers being paid by the mile, and only paid if those wheels are turning, I think it can have beneficial safety ramifications. And I think it also can be beneficial to just, drivers sometimes, if there's bad weather or if there's just some things that they need to stop, that doesn't mean that they're not working and they're still not in charge of that freight and working for the carrier or whoever it is. So all of those things, I think, deserve to be compensated.
And it makes sense that we would see more efficiency within the supply chain as well, which would make things a lot smoother at shippers and receivers. It doesn't take a giant leap to come to that conclusion as well, right? If they're honoring everybody's time, they're going to try to get people in and out.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it makes total sense. And it is funny when you hear from ATA or the people arguing like this is some sort of complicated thing or this would change things so much. Every other, a worker they have are compensated based off of time. There doesn't appear that it would be that difficult to do that for truck drivers. And like I said, I think overtime is a great place to start. And we also know that President Trump has said and kind of made the pledge and pitch to not tax overtime wages. And that makes this bill even all the more important because right now that wouldn't apply to truck drivers, but they'd be able to get this tax break if this comes to fruition. If the bill also goes through and they start getting overtime wages.
And there's also this push, right, to restore the per diem tax deduction for employee truck drivers as well. That kind of folds into what we're talking about as well.
Yeah, and I think there's so many things where you got to look at company drivers and protections, and these are two kind of key efforts I think that would really make it. And maybe help reduce that turnover problem that we see with company drivers so frequently as well. So we talk about the overtime guarantee, but then also on per diem, owner-operators right now are able to deduct off of their taxes about 80% of, for meal expenses and things while they're on the road. Before the tax cut of 2017, employee drivers were also able to do that. They lost that in that time. I think it was kind of an unintended consequence of the bill that I don't think they really understood of how that would apply to truck drivers. But that's all the way back in 2017, and we need to get that fixed. I've talked to, and I think you have as well, OIDA member Stu Hochfelder, who told me that it's changed about $20,000 per year that he's no longer able to write off on his taxes. That is a considerable hit on anybody's bank account.
Absolutely. Let's take a step back real quick to talk about the Gut Truckers Act again here. It's bipartisan. It's in both the House and the Senate, which helps its chances. Again, this is the second time it's been introduced, though. Looking back to where we were before, how far did the bill get last time, and what are we looking at now?
It didn't get a whole lot. You had 3 co-sponsors in the House, and you had 5 in the Senate. Again, there's some positives there because it is bipartisan. But the other positive that I'll give off here is this is highway bill time. And when this is a good opportunity that could be packaged into a larger highway bill, and the fact that we have support from Republicans and Democrats really helps the chances of something getting packaged into a larger bill.
Mark just finished a story on this very topic, one you can check out at landline.media, something I'd encourage everyone to do when they have the time. Thank you for your time, Mr. Schremmer. We'll see you again soon.